In today's episode, we will take a deep dive into education and how we learn. Who will we turn to learn and perform all the new jobs that will be probably coming in to the United States our way in the next year or so? Welcome to the next episode of the Coleman Nation. Let's go. Okay, this is going to be a fun episode today. It's going to kind of go all over the place, but my intention is kind of bring everybody back together, at the end here. So one of the serious problems in society today is that people are so afraid to fail. There's a path we've all been sold for the past 100 or so years, and this is the path of education. Once you get your education, you have credentials that make you an authority on various subjects and topics. Today, institutions of higher learning and higher education have become the path more traveled. But if everyone is traveling down the same path and moving in the same groove, there's no opportunity for, in my opinion, for real innovation. If people are too afraid to innovate and would rather escape into the safety of a tried and true career path, that becomes a tremendous detriment to society as a whole. It creates this self-fulfilling beast of people who are part of a collective that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I'm not saying that higher education is bad. An increased ability to think and lead in your field can be pulled from the college experience for sure. I myself know I went to college for a time. I didn't finish, but I could definitely see that the exposure to the information that I wanted to master or learn about was something that was very, very positive, and being around people that were in that industry also had a positive effect, but we'll talk about that in a second, right? But this is an empirical question that I have. How many people do you know who went to school for something and are not in the field that they were educated in? And how many people do you know who graduate from college with degrees and can't get jobs in their chosen field? This is a real problem. Now that this international trade war is very much underway at the time of this recording, of course, there's a constant argument over who will be able to perform all the manufacturing jobs we're potentially bringing back into the United States. There's an American arrogance that such jobs would be beneath someone. And I want to tell you this, to be honest with you, have always loved hard work and manual labor. I think it is very peaceful. I remember when I had first started off building, my current businesses, that one of my partners and I would sit outside the McDonald's. I remember we would have a stressful day. We'd sit outside the McDonald's and we'd watch these young people running the McDonald's and go, do you have any idea how peaceful that person is that's just flipping the fries in the fry machine? They have no cares in the world. They make no money. They just sit there and they just flip the fry. Like, they just do the fries. They make the ice cream cones. They flip the burgers. And it's like, it literally, you can just check out and go on autopilot. And we just used to dream about how life would be with no responsibilities, no one relying on us. What a just wonderful life. But that is not the reality of what it takes to build a society, right? You need to be able to have people that are willing to work hard and innovate. And I think that these are some of the things that are going to be coming back, right? So to see that arrogance that these jobs would be beneath someone is just completely insane. However, inefficiencies need to be examined. An incredible example of these inefficiencies is a company called Smithfield Foods. I don't have anything against them as a company per se, but they are owned by the Chinese. Okay, so they have ownership by the Chinese. They produce a huge amount of meat products in the United States that are then shipped to China to be processed, and then they're shipped back and sold to U.S. consumers. So the food is created here in the U.S., shipped to China and processed, and then shipped back here to the U.S. to be sold to U.S. consumers. I mean, does that strike anyone as inefficient? Not to mention what kind of preservative technologies would need to be required in order to be able to send that over, send it back, and then distribute it to the masses, and then have it not go bad during that period of time. These are scary thoughts, right? So another common example is when raw materials come from 10,000 miles away, are shipped to another country to be manufactured, and finished goods are finally shipped back here to the United States. This is also highly inefficient. The problem is that we have such inefficiencies, and they're accepted because of the collective box we've gotten into as Americans. We're not able to think outside this box, right? We have these accepted systems of how things are supposed to be produced, and no one questions the inefficiencies, the quality of the product, how they're being manufactured, or any of these types of things, which would logically be like, hey, wait a second, isn't there a better way? So elsewhere in the world, though, these inefficiencies are actually producing great opportunity. So other countries are able to profit from these tremendous inefficiencies that are being created by our manufacturing channel. So China produces many high-end fashion products. Okay, this is really important to understand. Materials are made in China and then finalized in Italy, France, and Germany so that you can have the made in that country, sort of label that's put on there. Then they're distributed through the West to be sold at 10 times markup. These are top brands. And by the way, I like some of these brands, but Vuitton, Louis Vuitton, Hermes, others, that are out there. This is the whole method of how they're produced. So now, in response to recently imposed tariffs, the Chinese have decided to break all their contracts with these brands. They're saying that they're going to sell all these products directly, right, irrespective of intellectual property rights. And so now you can buy that $15,000 Prada bag for $150. They're going to flood the market with discount originals because of the tariffs the United States is exacting on them. These products that you would be paying a premium for being flooded back into the market as a response to the tariffs. This is crazy. So some other countries see this as a great opportunity. Countries such as Vietnam and South Korea are saying that if China is not going to play ball, why don't we do this? Why don't we take over those manufacturing responsibilities? If the U.S. removes all the tariffs, we'll take on the manufacturing and do it all. We'll build everything that you want. So now a couple of things are happening. Number one, the manufacturing seat of power is shifting to Thailand, Vietnam, and other countries that are willing to create manufacturing jobs for their people. Nobody in those countries considers themselves too lofty for manufacturing work. Over here, Americans have lost sight of what it means to really work hard. Now, by the way, I want to tell you this right now. I'm not saying all Americans. I'm saying that there's a privileged class in America that would not do these jobs, but there's a working class that has been widely forgotten by the sort of this elite tier of higher educated people that go, well, we would never do those jobs, but we love to receive the production from it. And so you start saying, well, what about the people that are really willing to roll up their sleeves and actually do the work? Okay, so, but this is my point. Imagine for a moment that all these manufacturing jobs came flooding back to the US overnight. Shoe manufacturers came back to New Hampshire. Clothing and textile manufacturers came back to Ohio and Indiana. Imagine all these goods now currently being made in China, coming back to America, bringing trillions of dollars back into our economy. Well, here's what's going to happen. First, the U.S. has much higher work standards, okay? But look at where the money is going. If other countries send money here, there will always be people willing to take it and do the work. If jobs come into a natural supply and demand driven economy, a supply and demand economic structure, a price point will be found. Workers will say, I will do that work. Right? For such and such benefits, if you give me the benefits, if you give me this price point, if you give me this amount of income, and if you can help create a lifestyle that I can take care of my family, and if you can match these demands that I have in my mind, I will take that job. So look at the work that people are willing to do in America at the time. They're willing to drive Uber, right? They're willing to make Amazon deliveries. They're willing to do, to do Instacart. They're willing to do all these jobs that aren't actually the most high-end jobs, right? Because why? They need to survive. So giving someone stability, benefits, a steady paycheck, insurance, all these things create a tremendous domino effect in the economy. Hence, manufacturing jobs will backfill as they are created. Human resource companies will say, we have all these manufacturing jobs opening up in California, Nevada, Ohio, Indiana, and all these different places. They're going to start focusing on driving jobs into these communities. Communities centered around new manufacturing installations will be opening up all these new job opportunities. I've seen this happen in Central California. Amazon rolls in, boom, all of a sudden housing comes in, all these other things start to come in. So companies will do their research. They'll figure out where people are moving to, and you'll start to see a tremendous influx of wealth into these suburban communities. I bring all this up because people need to start being aware. In fact, they need to start being aware of being aware. The thing we forget about, and I realize it was a bit of a long road leading up to this topic, but one of the things that we need to realize is how we learn things. As a species, how do we learn? For far too long, Americans have been spoon-fed education. They've been placed and fixed in an authoritarian environment in order to be able to learn. In school, I'll give you an example. They have to ask for permission. Can I use the bathroom? Can I get a hall pass to walk down the hall? May I speak, right? Can I have permission? So you wind up getting into these boxes and it really has a domino effect on the aggressive desire to learn is reduced in our children. And you start to see this. Well, where is this rooted in? It's rooted in our education process. So many things are affected like this. You're trying to get accepted into a college. Okay. If you're not accepted, it's, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I'm not going to get my career. I'm not going to be able to have a job. I won't be accepted into that high level of society. This is all a big bogus game. At the end of the day, nobody cares. In fact, there are so many companies that are right now that they don't even care about your degree anymore. It's all an exercise of power. It's an exercise of potentially if you can get the job done. I think that that's going to be something that's more important now. It's like nobody cares about the piece of paper. In fact, I've seen some companies that are saying, look, we don't even really care if you graduated from college. Let me see what your work history is. What have you done in the past? In fact, that's one of the questions that I ask when we're, recruiting and hiring for, one of the companies that we're working for. What have you done in the past? What's the value that you brought to the employers that you've had before? That's always a key and critical question. So now, is there some value to education? Of course. I prefer that my doctors be trained at the best medical institutions. There's no doubt about that. But even then, some of the stuff they're being taught is not biology, it's ideology. And that is very, very scary. On the other hand, it's important to be exposed to and have the highest interaction with people who are accomplished in their fields. And that's going to start to work itself out. Okay, these are things that are going to work itself out. But my point is this: many people who would otherwise become wealthy in the next economic cycle in America are going to miss the boat. There will be an influx of jobs in many different places around the country. Okay, it's just going to happen. Let's look back at the California gold rush of 1849. Who made all the money during the gold rush? Those who set up shop for the prospectors selling pickaxes, shovels, and all the materials that they would need in order to be able to go out and prospect. Everyone was out to make their fortune, but at the end of the day, the people supplying the gold miners were the ones making steady incomes and a lot of money. With the amount of business investment coming into America, the ancillary job market and business opportunities, these are going to explode. Ancillary job markets will include benefits planning, food services, construction, accounting services, housing, mortgage, childcare, and more. These newly burgeoning communities will be flush with money. With the country's current direction, right, bringing manufacturing businesses back to America, All that needs to occur is to find a price point that's good for everybody and find the benefits that are enticing to these people that will be taking these new jobs. The media keeps asking the question, if we bring all these jobs back to America, who's going to do them? I'm telling you right now, there are people who will. Trade schools are expanding exponentially, currently outpacing enrollment trends in four-year universities. As skilled laborers, people could actually earn $100,000, get a house, have some benefits, pay for good schools for their kids, and live comfortable lives in safe neighborhoods. And people, I think that this is really what people want. They just want a little bit of certainty, and they want the fact that, hey, if I go to work for a company, is this going to increase the survival potential and capacity of my family? That's all that people are really looking for. So when you start to cut out things like wasted processing in other countries, those jobs and that money will stay here. There will be a boom, right? There's no way that there couldn't be a boom economically in the United States if these things sort of unfold the way they are. Now, I'm not predicting this, right? Like, by the way, none of this is intended as financial advice in any way, shape, or form. So please don't take it as such. Make sure that you talk to your financial professional about that stuff. But economically, in broad strokes, this makes sense. When you push money and production into a confined space, right, meaning a specific community, that community starts to grow. We all must reset how we learn. What do I mean by that? For so long, Americans have been so afraid to fail that they don't even try anymore. They take the easiest way out. And it's unfortunate, because a lot of great ideas die on the vine because people are too afraid to pursue them. I remember, over the years, I just remember this one conversation that I sort of was listening to from these people that were kind of training to go into the medical field. And it was just like, are you going to become a EMT, or are you going to become a, nurse practitioner? And they were like, well, it's a very easy and predictable way to know that I can wind up getting this amount of money. Is that what they wanted to do? Like, did they want to go into those fields when some of them probably did, but they just go, you know what? It's the path of least resistance to be able to just make money. And I think that if we can really create an encouraging environment for innovation, I think that we're going to have not only an economic boom, but we're actually going to have an expansion of society and civilization that would sort of usher in a new golden age. And that's very, very exciting. On all of this stuff, I'm talking to myself as much as I am talking to you. Like, how many times have we had great ideas only to see someone else execute them just a little bit faster and with a little more oomph? And we find out that person is a billionaire now. So let's talk about what we've got to do, how we're going to adjust this. Number one, we've got to be willing to try. This is how we learn. We try and fail, and we try again and fail again until we succeed. The key is that if you want to become successful, you have to have an idea. That idea has to start with a solution to some sort of problem. Are there more problems now than there ever have been before? Absolutely. So does that mean that there's an opportunity for solutions? Absolutely. So let's just take the topic I'm covering here. You've now heard that these jobs are coming. If you consider it further, right, the people that are taking these jobs will need housing. They might need childcare, schooling support. The community and businesses will need suppliers. Avoid the thought process of no one's going to pay for that. For everyone who talks themselves out of a good idea, someone else says, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot and see what happens. You just have to be the person that's willing to try. And right now, that's the way to take advantage of the coming economic boom. So that's number one, is you got to try, you got to fail, and then you got to keep trying again, and you keep failing, you'll learn, and then you keep moving. That's number one. Here's the second thing you need to learn. With all this trial and failure, one of the things that you've got to get good at is what I call synthesis. It's extrapolating ideas and finding the path to success just by reviewing what you are doing. Look at the things you try and ask yourself, how did it work? And how can I figure another path that moves me further away from failure and moves me closer to success? Synthesis is about taking newly acquired information, combining it with other data that you had before failure, and from that, creating a whole new synthesized idea. One of our greatest tools is our ability to reason and apply logic to problem solving. It's being Solution focus as opposed to problem focus, I think, is really important. So number 3 is that as you progress, you gain empirical knowledge. Okay. I'm studying a little bit about farming right now. I don't know anything about farming. I've never farmed anything in my life. I did live on a farm for a couple of years and did some gardening and mowing of the lawn and whatever, but I was never involved in actual farming activity. So I have a little knowledge, but not much. As you guys know, if you're following the channel, we bought a small plot of land in Central Florida. A bunch of like-minded individuals live nearby who are trying to start their own farms as well. So now I'm getting some empirical knowledge, some practical experience in the area of farming. So the third ingredient is acquired through progressing and getting actual empirical applicable knowledge to your area, right, of what you want to learn. So first you try and you fail, try and fail. And then number 2, you start synthesizing, solutions, right? Thinking about, okay, how can I solve these problems? And number 3 is now you gain vast stores of experience and empirical knowledge. So as you continue to gain empirical knowledge, you'll become that person who's looked up to in your area of expertise. This could be used to achieve success in any endeavor. Finally, number 4 is probably the most important one, utilizing the experience of others by getting mentorship. Find people you really look up to in your area of endeavor. Look for those who are most successful. I've heard people going to work for a mentor for free for 6 months or a year just to get connections and insight into an industry. I have mentors in farming, raising livestock and hunting. I've been their mentor in the business realm, but they're my mentors in farming, animal husbandry, and hunting. So to wrap up this episode, I think that if we all approach life a little like a video game, right? And this is not going to, communicate to baby boomers and people that are older. I grew up in the video game world, but I think that if we all approach life a little bit like a video game where you're going through and finishing these little tasks, you're doing all these little side quests, right? It becomes a lot of fun. You keep your eye on the main prize of what it is that you want to accomplish. You keep moving forward. One day you look up and you realize that you've won the game. I think that this is a really, really good way of looking at it. I think that this is a winning analogy for today's youth. We just have to apply it in real life. If we put down the digital input devices and go out there and approach life in the same way, I think that we can all win. So what do you think? How do you feel about the coming economy? What are going to be some of the things that you'll be excited about? Are there any business ideas, or do you think that there's going to be any industries that are going to exponentially explode as a result of, some of the economic challenges that are placed before us at this time? Do you feel I'm totally off base or completely spot on? If you have any questions or ideas you'd like to share, please put them in the comments below. I think that the comments have actually been super funny recently. If you found this episode interesting, and helpful, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn notifications on so you will be notified immediately when we release new episodes. Also, make sure that you share this episode. I think that this one in particular is really good to be able to share with others. Have a great one. We'll see you on the next episode of the Coleman Nation. Thanks, everybody. Take care.